Welcome to Wisdom for the Present, where we take ancient truth and bring it into clear, modern understanding. This episode uses AI-generated narration based on human-researched and written material.
That'd be here.
So today, we are doing a deep dive into something that, well, at first glance might sound a little dry.
Oh, definitely. People here were looking at the Book of Numbers, and they tend to tune out.
Right. I mean, it literally has the word numbers in the title, but I want you, the listener, to just imagine the sheer sensory overload of the situation for a second. You are standing right in the middle of the Sinai Peninsula.
Which is not a hospitable place.
Not at all. It's about 3,000 years ago. The heat is just oppressive. It's radiating off the rocky ground. The air is thick with dust. And surrounding you is this massive, chaotic, adrenaline-fueled mass of 2 million people.
2 million, it's staggering.
It really is. And you have to remember, this is a population that just a little over a year ago was entirely enslaved.
Yeah, they were living under the brutal, really dehumanizing thumb of the Egyptian Empire. They were basically treated as a disposable labor force.
Exactly. And they fled Egypt in this desperate rush. They've been surviving on miracles and adrenaline for months. But now, well, the dust is kind of settling.
The honeymoon phase of the escape is definitely over.
Right. The euphoria has worn off. They are staring down the unforgiving terrain of the wilderness of Paran, and they're quickly realizing that adrenaline gets you out of bondage, sure, but it absolutely will not keep 2 million people alive in a desert.
No, it won't. And that transition moving from a mob of fleeing fugitives into a truly functioning nation, that is the monumental challenge we are looking at today.
Because they really are becoming a nation now, a kingdom of priests.
Exactly. And when we approach these ancient texts, we usually expect, I don't know, sweeping poetry or dramatic narratives. But the first 10 chapters of Numbers read completely differently.
It reads like an ancient spreadsheet.
It really does. To casual readers, it looks like an incredibly dry municipal zoning code. You've got endless censuses, hyper-specific job descriptions, camp layouts detailing, exactly how many wagons a particular family gets.
Which feels super inaccessible at first.
Yeah, but when you strip away that surface-level bureaucracy, you realize you're looking at the mechanics of what is actually happening.
Well,
this section of text reveals itself to be a profound masterclass in organizing human life.
It's a blueprint.
A total blueprint for navigating deep uncertainty and building a cohesive society from the ground up.
And that is exactly what we are going to unpack. We want to examine the architecture of that society because whether you are organizing a massive company or leading a family through a crisis, or honestly just trying to bring some structural order to your own chaotic mind, this text is relevant.
Highly relevant for the 21st century.
So let's start at the outermost layer of this newly forming society, which is how they count their people. Chapter 1 mandates this massive, sweeping census.
Right. Moses and Aaron are told to count every male 20 years and older who is able to go to war.
And they arrive at a very specific final tally, right? 603,550.
That is the exact number.
Okay, so here is where I have to push back a little bit because my initial reaction to reading this is just total skepticism.
How so?
Well, counting people just sounds like the ultimate bureaucratic busy work. If they are operating under the premise that an omnipotent divine figure is leading them, why do they need a head count? God doesn't need a spreadsheet to know the logistical strength of the camp, right?
That is a great point. But the physical data collection here is actually secondary. It's the psychological intervention happening that matters.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. To understand the function of this census, it really helps to look at the work of Matthew Henry.
The theologian.
Right, the early 18th century theologian. His commentaries are foundational because he always synthesizes the historical data with the psychological realities of the text. And Henry points out 2 crucial functions of this count.
Okay, what's the first one?
First, it serves as undeniable, tangible proof of a historical promise.
The promise to Abraham.
Exactly. Centuries prior, the foundational promise made to Abraham was that his descendants would multiply immensely. Now, when Jacob's family originally migrated to Egypt, the historical records within the text say there were only 75 people.
Wow. 75.
Just 75. And then, 2 centuries of brutal slavery later, you suddenly have a standing army of over 600,000 men.
Which, if you extrapolate that out to include women and children,
demographers suggest it implies a total population of 2 to 3 million.
That is wild.
So for the Israelites, actually participating in this census forces them to look around and process a staggering reality. They survived an empire that tried to work them to death. And they didn't just survive, they multiplied.
Okay, that shifts the perspective entirely. It isn't just bureaucracy. It is taking a physical inventory of their survival.
Yes, exactly. But there's also a deeply personal layer to how they do it. The text specifically commands them to count the people by the number of their names, every male by their polls.
Meaning head by head.
Right. And you have to remember, back in Egypt, they were not individuals. They were just bricks in a wall.
Totally. Their individual identities were completely erased by the state.
So this methodical counting by name feels like a systematic restoration of human dignity. It establishes that a functional society cannot view its people merely as a monolithic labor force. Everyone is known.
Everyone holds a distinct place.
Matthew Henry frames this as the care of a shepherd counting a flock, making sure no single individual is lost in the mass.
I love that. That restoration of individuality really is the first step in building a healthy community, but, knowing who is in the camp is only half the equation.
Right, you have to know where they belong.
Exactly. Which brings us to Chapter 2, where the text outlines the physical layout of the encampment. And we are talking about a portable city of massive proportions.
It's huge. And it's arranged in a highly deliberate square. The 12 tribes are organized into 4 distinct camps of 3 tribes each, taking up positions on the north, south, east, and west.
And Judah holds the position of honor, right? Leading the eastern flank, facing the sunrise.
That's right.
Now, the logistics of organizing a 3-square-mile temporary city are mind-boggling to me. But the defining feature of this entire layout is what is in the center.
The tabernacle, right?
The physical structure representing the dwelling place of the divine presence sits in the absolute middle. And the text notes that the tribes are to camp afar off, which creates this vast buffer zone of reverence around the tabernacle.
And this is key, every single tent is pitched facing inward.
Right. All physical orientation points toward the center. It kind of reminds me of those brilliantly designed cities, where all the roads point inward to a central park.
Yeah, that is a great way to picture it.
But in this case, the center isn't a park, it is the divine presence.
The 19th century theologian Albert Barnes actually talked about this. He's highly regarded for his precise historical analysis of these texts. He noted that this layout was designed to illustrate the community's total dependence on their core spiritual center,
while also making sure everyone had equal access to it.
Exactly. It's a brilliant psychological tool.
Yeah.
The physical architecture of the camp is dictating the mental architecture of the people.
Because it's literally the first thing you see.
Right. By placing the tabernacle perfectly in the middle, every Israelite who stepped out of their tent in the morning was immediately confronted with the visual representation of their core values.
The center of gravity wasn't tucked away on a distant hill on the outskirts?
No, it was the hub.
Yeah.
Everything. All daily activities, all movement, all commerce, it all revolved around that center.
Which presents a really fascinating parallel to modern life for you listening. Obviously, we are not living in desert encampments today, but every single one of us has an architecture to our lives.
We absolutely do.
We have a structural layout governing how we arrange our time, our financial resources, and our mental energy. And very often, our modern camp is built around our career or our smartphone or just a pervasive sense of anxiety.
Yeah, anxiety is a huge one.
Right. We wake up, we step out of our mental tents, and the very first thing we orient ourselves toward is our inbox or a social media feed.
We check our phones before we even get out of bed.
Exactly. So the challenge this ancient text presents is one of intentional structural design. Think about it. If an outside observer were to audit your calendar and your bank statements today, what would they identify as the absolute center of your camp?
That is a tough question to answer, honestly.
It really is, because the center inevitably dictates the movement of the periphery.
Right. If anxiety is the central fixture, your entire daily routine is structurally organized around managing or avoiding that anxiety.
Or if raw ambition is the center, then your personal relationships and your health get subjugated. They get pushed to the outer edges of the camp.
And you have to realize, the Israelites didn't just stumble into this formation. They were systematically ordered into it. It required conscious effort.
So bringing functional order to our own lives requires that same deliberate choice. We have to choose what we allow to occupy the center and force the rest of our lives to organize around it.
Which is easier said than done.
Definitely. Now that transition from the physical layout of the camp to the maintenance of that core center brings us to the logistics of labor.
Right, chapter 3 and 4.
Yeah, the focus shifts from the warriors on the perimeter to the workers in the middle. We are introduced to the tribe of Levi. And honestly, the methodology of their appointment reads remarkably like an aggressive corporate restructuring.
Or an exact accounting audit.
Totally.
The historical context here is vital, though. Originally, the cultural expectation was that the firstborn son of every family would be dedicated to the service of this central sanctuary.
Which goes back to their survival during the exodus out of Egypt, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
But think about the logistics of that. Trying to run the highly complex, dangerous logistics of moving and maintaining the tabernacle using a decentralized workforce of firstborn sons from 12 different tribes.
That would be a complete nightmare. You'd have people from all over the camp trying to coordinate.
It would be chaos. So the text details a divine substitution. The entire tribe of Levi is drafted to serve in place of the firstborns of the entire nation.
But they don't just rely on a vague symbolic agreement. They execute a precise mathematical audit.
They really do. The leadership counts the male Levites from a month old and upward, and they arrive at 22,000.
Okay.
Then they count all the firstborn males of the other tribes, and they arrive at 22,273.
Leaving a discrepancy of exactly 273 firstborns who do not have a one-to-one Levite substitute.
Right, and the text demands a specific redemption price of 5 shekels per head for those extra 273 individuals.
Which totals 1,365 shekels. And that has to be paid to the central leadership. The sheer exactness of this transaction feels surprisingly rigid to me.
It does feel rigid, but that exactness serves a very specific socio-political function. By demanding a perfectly balanced ledger, the system prevents any future ambiguity.
Or political leverage.
Exactly. It prevents resentment among the tribes. No single tribe can look at another and claim they contributed more human capital to the center. It grounds spiritual devotion in hearth, physical, and economic reality.
Which is so practical. It demonstrates that maintaining the core of a society requires tangible, equitable commitment. You can't just run it on vague communal goodwill.
You really can't. And that physical reality becomes incredibly apparent when we look at these specific job descriptions given to the Levite families in chapter 7.
Right. The Gershonites, the Kohathites, and the Merarites.
The leaders of the other tribes donate a fleet of 6 covered wagons and 12 oxen to assist with the transport of the tabernacle infrastructure.
And the way Moses distributes these wagons is a brilliant study in proportional resourcing.
It is entirely based on the physical realities of the burden.
Okay, break that down for us.
So the Gershonites are tasked with carrying the curtains, the hangings, and the heavy tent coverings. It's bulky material, but it's manageable. So they receive 2 wagons.
Makes sense.
Then you have the Merarites. They are responsible for the foundational framework. We are talking about massive wooden boards, heavy pillars, and enormous silver sockets used for the foundation.
How heavy are we talking?
Well, Albert Barnes calculates that those silver sockets alone weighed a talent each, roughly 75 to 100 pounds. And there were dozens of them.
Wow.
Yeah, the Merarites were hauling an estimated 4 tons of solid silver, plus all the structural lumber.
So they need serious help.
Exactly. Recognizing this immense physical strain, they are allocated 4 wagons and 8 oxen.
Okay, so that leaves the Kohathites. And they are assigned the most sacred, vital items of the entire camp.
The Ark of the Covenant, the golden lampstand, the altars.
Items constructed of solid gold or dense wood overlaid with gold. So the physical weight is immense, but the number of wagons allocated to the Kohathites is 0.
0.
The text explicitly commands that they must carry these sacred objects on their own shoulders using specialized poles.
Yes. And the mechanism of this distribution reveals a profound principle. Strength and tools are proportioned to the nature of the burden.
So the heaviest, most grueling structural work receives the maximum mechanical assistance.
But the core, sacred duties, require intimate manual care. You do not place the Ark of the Covenant on a wooden cart to be jostled over rocks by oxen.
That would be totally inappropriate.
Right. It requires the physical presence, the sweat, and the absolute undivided focus of the people carrying it.
Looking at this through a modern leadership lens, the metaphor is so striking. Think about any organization, or even just your personal life. You can automate or delegate the heavy structural lifting, right? The administrative boards and sockets.
You use software, you hire assistants, you build systems to carry that load.
Exactly. But the core values, the central mission, the sacred elements of what you are trying to build, you cannot outsource those to a wagon.
You have to carry the integrity of your mission on your own shoulders.
You really do. But the text also introduces a highly pragmatic boundary regarding how long someone is expected to carry that weight.
Yes, in chapters 4 and 8.
There is a detailed outline of the working lifespan for a Levite engaged in this specific heavy lifting service.
They are mandated to enter the transport service at age 30, and they are required to step down at age 50.
Matthew Henry calls this a writ of ease. And a mandatory retirement from the physical grind at age 50 is fascinating, especially when you contrast it with our modern hustle culture.
Oh, completely. We celebrate working at maximum capacity until you physically collapse.
Right. We wear burnout like a badge of honor. But this ancient system explicitly recognizes the biological limits of human endurance.
And it protects both the individual and the institution. Transporting tons of silver and gold through a desert is a young person's game. By mandating a transition at age 50, the system prevents the individual from being physically destroyed by the work. But crucially, it also protects the sacred objects from being mishandled or dropped by someone whose strength is failing, but whose pride or sense of duty prevents them from stepping away.
That is such a good point. Ego can be dangerous in leadership, but they don't just vanish from the community at 50, do they?
No, not at all. The text specifies they are to remain at the tent of meeting to assist their brothers and keep the charge.
So they transition from raw physical output into mentorship, supervision, and institutional memory.
The 30-year-olds provide the necessary muscle, while the 50-year-olds provide the vital experience to guide them.
For you listening, the reflection here really centers on recognizing the specific season of life you are currently navigating. If you try to operate with a 30-year-old's physical burden when you only have a 50-year-old's energy, it leads to catastrophic burnout.
And conversely, a 30-year-old attempting to operate with the nuanced wisdom of a 50-year-old without having done the requisite heavy lifting often leads to arrogance or systemic failure.
A sustainable life requires gracefully transitioning from the phase of raw output into the phase of oversight.
Absolutely, because if the physical labor force breaks down, the entire camp is paralyzed, which actually makes the transition into Chapter 5 so logical.
Right, moving from the physical order to the moral order.
You can meticulously engineer the perfect camp layout, and you can balance the labor distribution flawlessly. But if 2 million people are living in extreme proximity under high stress,
the system will instantly collapse if interpersonal trust rots.
Precisely.
So Chapter 5 directly attacks the behaviors that destroy communal trust, beginning with theft and deceit. The text outlines this strict law of restitution. If someone commits a trespass against another person, a simple apology or a private prayer of confession is deemed insufficient.
It's not enough to just say, "My bad."
Right. The law requires the offender to publicly confess, return the principal value of whatever was taken, and then add a 1/5 penalty, a 20% surcharge, giving it directly to the victim.
The mechanics of this law move beyond punitive justice into true restorative justice. The goal isn't just to punish the offender, it's to repair the social fabric.
Because true apologies are materially costly.
Exactly. By forcing the offender to pay a 20% penalty, they feel the tangible weight of their transgression. And the victim is made financially better off than they were before the offense occurred.
Which prevents lingering resentment. It definitively closes the loop on the conflict.
It does. But that handles a tangible, verifiable crime like theft. The text immediately moves into a scenario that is far more insidious, largely because it happens entirely in the shadows.
Hidden, unverified suspicion.
Yes. Which brings us to the trial of jealousy.
Okay, we really need to talk about this because this is undeniably one of the most jarring, uncomfortable passages in the entire text for a modern reader. I mean, reading it today, it sounds like a medieval witch trial.
It definitely requires careful analysis.
Yeah.
We have to understand the mechanics of what the text is actually doing,
Yeah.
rather than just reacting to the surface level discomfort.
Let me just lay out the scenario presented. A husband suspects his wife of infidelity. He has no witnesses, no physical proof. He is simply overcome with what the text calls a spirit of jealousy.
That paranoid fixation.
Right. So under this law, he brings his wife to the priest. The priest takes holy water, mixes it with dust swept from the floor of the tabernacle, writes a series of curses on a scroll, and washes the ink into the water. And the woman is forced to drink this bitter water.
Yes.
And the text states that if she is guilty, the water will cause severe physical trauma, her abdomen will swell, her thigh will waste away. But if she is innocent, she will remain unharmed and capable of bearing children.
It's a heavy, heavy ritual.
I mean, analyzing this today, it looks like a deeply asymmetrical, misogynistic setup. The woman is subjected to a terrifying ordeal based entirely on a man's unverified paranoia.
The discomfort you are feeling is entirely justified. And it is crucial that we do not gloss over the severe patriarchal imbalance of the ancient world. There is no corresponding trial for a jealous wife.
Right. It's totally one-sided.
It is. However, to understand the structural brilliance of this specific intervention, we have to examine the historical reality of the ancient Near East at that time.
What was the baseline reality?
Domestic power was absolute. If a husband was consumed by paranoia, he did not need a court. He functioned as judge, jury, and executioner. He could violently abuse his wife, cast her out of the camp to starve, or simply kill her and face zero legal repercussions.
So the baseline reality was absolute, unchecked domestic terror.
Exactly. What this law engineers is a radical disruption of that unchecked power. When the spirit of jealousy hits the husband, the law removes his ability to act violently in private.
It takes it out of his hands.
Right. It forces him to take his suspicion out of the shadows and hand jurisdiction over to a public, mediated authority.
Okay, I see.
And when we examine the biology of the bitter water itself, the brilliance of the intervention becomes clear. Holy water mixed with a pinch of floor dust and ink is biologically inert. It is harmless.
It isn't poison. It's literally just gritty water.
Exactly. It is entirely different from the trials by ordeal we see in later European history, where individuals were thrown into freezing rivers, bound with rope, or forced to carry red-hot iron. Those processes guarantee physical harm regardless of guilt.
You're going to burn your hand whether you're innocent or not.
Right. But this ritual relies on the biological safety of the water, paired with deep psychological conviction. If the woman knows she is innocent, drinking the water holds no physical terror for her.
And when she drinks it and remains perfectly healthy,
the husband is legally, publicly bound by the highest authority in the camp to drop his suspicion. His paranoia is legally neutralized.
Wow.
The ritual essentially functions as a protective mechanism for the vulnerable party, halting summary execution and forcing the paranoid party to submit to a process where the default biological outcome is vindication.
Okay, that completely flips the reading of the text. It takes a situation of extreme vulnerability and uses the religious framework to construct a firewall against domestic violence.
Exactly.
And while the modern world rightly rejects those asymmetrical gender dynamics, the underlying psychological diagnosis of suspicion remains incredibly sharp.
Unverified, hidden suspicion is a social toxin.
It metastasizes in the dark. It destroys marriages, business partnerships, communities. The enduring principle here is that when deep mistrust takes root, you cannot allow it to simmer in private. You must force it into a mediated, structured process of verification. And once that process clears the air, the suspicion must be permanently dropped.
Because the community cannot survive if paranoia is allowed to dictate reality.
So true. Now, if Chapter 5 is focused on mitigating the negative extremes of human behavior theft, deceit, suspicion Chapter 6 pivots sharply. It addresses the pursuit of positive extremes.
Yes, it outlines the parameters for the Nazirite vow,
which is a voluntary commitment to extreme separation and focus.
Right.
And the striking thing about the Nazirite vow is that it is explicitly open to anyone in the camp, man or woman. But the behavioral constraints are severe.
Very severe.
During the period of the vow, the individual cannot consume wine or strong drink. They cannot even consume fresh grapes, raisins, or grape seeds. They are forbidden from cutting their hair, allowing it to grow as a public, visible marker of their vow.
And most intensely, they are strictly forbidden from coming into proximity with a dead body.
Even if the deceased is their own mother, father, brother, or sister.
Right. The prohibition regarding funerals often strikes readers as excessively harsh, almost anti-family, which seems contradictory in a culture where family lineage is the absolute bedrock of identity.
It feels cold.
It does. But the severity of the rule highlights a profound concept regarding prioritization. The Nazirite vow establishes that there are rare, specific seasons in life where ultimate, singular dedication to a higher calling must temporarily supersede even the most fundamental, sacred human obligations.
It's extreme, but it makes a point. The dietary restrictions are equally fascinating to me, particularly the absolute ban on anything related to grapes.
Right.
I mean, avoiding intoxication makes logical sense if the goal is spiritual clarity. But banning a fresh grape or a raisin seems entirely arbitrary. Why target a perfectly normal piece of fruit?
To understand the ban on grapes, we have to look at what the grape represented in ancient agricultural societies. Wine and grape products were the primary symbols of joy, leisure, luxury, and social lubrication.
They were the standard comforts.
Grapes represented the baseline comforts of everyday societal rhythm. So by cutting out not just the intoxicating element, but the fruit itself, the Nazirite is intentionally stepping out of the normal rhythms of societal comfort.
They are creating a physical and social friction.
Exactly. It constantly reminds them of their set-apart status.
Which feels so similar to things we do today. The modern psychological equivalent of this is undeniably the dopamine detox.
You're absolutely.
We see professionals, creatives, and athletes undergo periods where they intentionally cut out perfectly normal, permissible activities. They might delete social media for a month, or commit to dry January, or go on a silent retreat.
They aren't cutting out criminal behavior. They're cutting out the modern equivalent of the grape. The easy comforts that scatter our attention.
Right. The Nazirite vow, which was typically a defined period of 30 days rather than a lifelong commitment, is really just a structured mechanism for achieving radical focus. For you listening, think about what permissible comfort you could step away from right now to regain your focus. Because sometimes, to deeply connect with an ultimate purpose, we have to temporarily disconnect from what is comfortable and normal.
And all of this intense structuring, the censuses, the heavy lifting, the conflict resolution, the extreme vows of focus, it all culminates at the end of chapter 6 with the priestly blessing.
Yes, God instructs Moses to have Aaron speak a specific blessing over the people. The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face shine on you and be gracious to you. The Lord turn his face toward you and give you peace.
Linguistically, it is a brilliantly constructed piece of text.
It is structurally ascending, isn't it?
Yes. It consists of 3 distinct clauses that build in intensity and intimacy. It begins with a request for baseline physical protection, keep you. It then ascends to a request for active favor and grace, make his face shine on you. And it culminates in the ultimate crowning gift, the single word that the entire societal architecture has been driving towards.
Peace.
Peace. In Hebrew, shalom.
Which means far more than just an absence of conflict, right?
Much more. It implies wholeness, completeness, and a state where everything is functioning exactly as it should.
It reveals a massive paradigm shift regarding the purpose of rules. Think about it. The rigid spreadsheets, the camp layouts, the heavy lift, none of that is the end goal.
Organization for the sake of control is tyranny.
Wow, yes. The architecture exists solely as the scaffolding necessary to create a secure environment where shalom can flourish.
The system is designed to produce peace. However, any system, no matter how divinely inspired or meticulously engineered, eventually collides with the messy, unpredictable tragedy of human existence.
Which is exactly what happens in Chapter 9. The perfectly designed system fractures under the weight of human reality through the event of the second Passover.
Right. The Passover is the most critical commemorative event of the Israelite calendar. It is the anniversary of their liberation, and participation is mandatory.
But a logistical crisis arises. A group of men approach Moses, stating that they are ceremonially unclean because they've had to touch a dead body.
Historical context from commentators like Barnes suggests these men may have been Bezalel and Elizaphan. Earlier in the year, they were explicitly commanded to carry the bodies of their cousins, Nadab and Abihu, out of the camp after a catastrophic failure in the tabernacle.
So they were basically doing a required tragic duty.
Exactly. Whether it was them or simply men who had to bury a parent, they were performing a necessary human duty. But the strict, binary purity laws of the camp dictate that touching a corpse renders you unclean, and being unclean legally bars you from the Passover.
So the men are devastated. They challenge Moses, basically asking, why should we be kept back from offering the Lord's offering just because we experience death in our family?
It is a profound paradox.
It really is. The system has created a scenario where honoring a loved one mechanically locks them out of their community's most sacred event.
And Moses' reaction in this moment is a definitive study in leadership under pressure.
Right, because he is the supreme architect of the law. He's the guy who brought the tablets down from the mountain.
The natural inclination of an insecure leader would be to rigidly enforce the rule to maintain authority, to just say, hey, the law is the law.
Or a populist leader might just flippantly dismiss the rule to appease the crowd.
But Moses does neither. He pauses the entire bureaucratic machine and says, wait, that I may hear what the Lord will command concerning you.
He publicly admits that the existing framework is insufficient for the reality in front of him. And he refuses to just guess the answer. That requires immense humility.
It does. And the resulting divine intervention is remarkable. The original law is not abolished, but a mechanism of grace is permanently installed into the system.
The second Passover is created.
Yes. A makeup date scheduled exactly 1 month later, specifically designed for those who are ceremonially unclean or away on a long journey.
For modern leaders, the organizational insight here is massive. Rigid systems ultimately break. If a corporate structure or a family routine or a legal framework cannot accommodate the tragic, messy realities of human life like grief, illness, unavoidable absence, it will eventually crush the very people it was designed to organize.
The law must serve the people. The people are not meant to be crushed by the law.
Effective leadership recognizes when a rigid application of the rules violates the core spirit of the community. It requires the wisdom to pause, evaluate, and construct a second Passover, a compassionate workaround that honors the integrity of the institution while extending grace to the individual.
Having established this mechanism of grace, the narrative in chapters 9 and 10 finally prepares the camp to move.
The physical order is set, the moral order is purified, the systems are in place. But moving a decentralized city of 2 million people into an uncharted, hostile desert requires an absolute mastery of timing and communication.
The timing is governed by a phenomena the text describes as a pillar of cloud by day and a pillar of fire by night, which rests directly over the tabernacle.
This basically serves as their visual divine GPS, and the operational rule is binary. When the cloud lifts, the camp packs up and marches. When the cloud settles, the camp stops and pitches their tents.
The psychological toll of this system cannot be overstated. The text explicitly highlights the maddening unpredictability of the cloud. It states that sometimes the cloud would remain for just a few days.
Right.
Other times, it would settle in the evening and lift the very next morning, forcing an immediate, exhausting relocation. Sometimes it would remain stationary for a month or even a full year.
The level of surrender required to live under that system is staggering to think about. Just imagine the physical exhaustion. You finally find a location with a decent water source, you unpack the heavy wagons, set up the massive infrastructure of the tabernacle, arrange 3 square miles of tents, and finally settle in.
And the next morning, the cloud lifts.
You have to tear it all down immediately. Or, on the flip side, you are camped in a miserable, scorching valley. The morale is plummeting, the resources are thin, everyone is desperate to leave. But the cloud simply hovers there, motionless, for a month.
Operating under the cloud is the ultimate exercise in being relentlessly present. It strips away the illusion of human control over time. We are culturally conditioned to dictate our own pace.
We really are. We construct elaborate timelines, assuming we can force reality to conform to our 5-year plans. I need to be promoted by 30.
And when reality inevitably stalls, or accelerates beyond our control, we experience severe anxiety. The discipline of the cloud forces the Israelites to sit contentedly when circumstances demand stillness, and to maintain a state of constant readiness to mobilize the moment the environment shifts.
While the cloud provided the visual cue for timing, managing the chaotic logistics of the actual movement required a massive upgrade in communication. 2 million people cannot simply look at the sky and decide to walk simultaneously without causing a lethal stampede.
No, they can't. This is where chapter 10 introduces the silver trumpets. Moses is commanded to forge 2 trumpets of hammered silver.
It's worth noting the historical origin of these trumpets, right?
Yes. Commentators like Barnes suggest the straight beaten silver design of these trumpets was a technology directly appropriated from the Egyptian military.
So they are taking the logistical tools of their former oppressors and repurposing them to facilitate their own journey to freedom.
Exactly. In the vast, sound-swallowing environment of the desert, sonic engineering was the only viable method of mass communication.
They essentially develop an ancient binary code, a sonic push notification system for 2 million people.
The text outlines the specific acoustic signals. 1 trumpet blast signals the tribal leaders to assemble. 2 trumpets blown together signal the entire congregation to gather.
And a specific alarm blast dictates that the eastern camps break ground and move. A second alarm blast signals the southern camps.
It transforms the abstract, divine movement of the cloud into highly specific, actionable, sequential steps for the human logistics on the ground. Ambiguity in communication during a massive logistical shift is deadly.
The trumpets completely eliminate the ambiguity. Everyone knows exactly what the signal means, and they know the precise sequence of operations.
But right as this massive, divinely guided, technologically equipped machine is about to launch into the wilderness, we get a surprisingly grounded, deeply human interaction.
Moses and his brother-in-law.
Right. Moses approaches Hobab, a Midianite who has lived his entire life in the desert. Moses pleads with Hobab to join the camp, stating, "Please do not leave us, for you know how we are to encamp in the wilderness, and you will serve as eyes for us."
The juxtaposition in that scene is incredible to me. Moses is standing under a miraculous glowing pillar of fire. He has direct access to the divine architect of the universe. He has a perfectly organized camp and a silver trumpet communication system, yet he looks at a local desert nomad and says, "We need you."
He recognizes that divine guidance does not negate the necessity for boots-on-the-ground human expertise.
It is a profound acknowledgement of the value of practical, hard-won experience. The pillar of fire provides the ultimate directional heading, but Moses needs Hobab's localized knowledge to identify the hidden water sources, to spot the physical potholes, and to navigate the granular, daily survival challenges of the desert terrain.
It demonstrates that deep faith and highly pragmatic human wisdom are not mutually exclusive. They are designed to operate in tandem.
And as we conclude our journey through these first 10 chapters, a really distinct picture emerges. The Israelites have been counted and validated. Their camp is flawlessly organized around their central value.
Their heavy labor is equitably distributed and boundaried.
They have instituted restorative justice, mechanisms to neutralize suspicion, protocols for extreme focus, and built-in grace for human tragedy. On paper, as they prepare to march away from Sinai, they are the most perfectly structured society imaginable.
Structurally, they are invincible.
But I want to leave you, the listener, with this final thought. The reality of what happens next is the ultimate lesson of the text. The moment this perfectly organized camp steps fully into the harsh reality of the wilderness of Paran, human nature is going to violently test the architecture.
In the chapters that follow, there will be devastating failures, bitter complaining, rebellion, and fear.
Because the profound truth revealed here is that perfect organizational systems do not guarantee perfect human behavior. We can engineer the most flawless corporate cultures, the most equitable laws, and the most disciplined personal habits, and we will still inevitably falter.
The friction of human experience will always threaten to erode the structures we build.
But what the architecture of numbers provides is not a guarantee of perfection. It provides a framework for recovery. When the chaos of the wilderness inevitably scatters us, having a defined center gives us a fixed point to look back toward. If the center is intentionally chosen and the boundaries are clearly defined, the camp can always find its way back into formation.
Exactly.
That's the heart of this section. This is wisdom for the present, where understanding leads to clarity, and clarity shapes how we see and live. We'll see you in the next episode.